He just couldn't.
You're saying. Yeah, I know. Good morning and welcome to the March 19th Scarborough Board of Education Budget Workshop. Can we call the attendance, please?
Sure. Ms. Scanlon?
Here.
Ms. Castellanos?
Here.
Mr. Kelleher?
Here.
Ms. Leon? Mrs. Lindstrom?
Here.
Ms. Tarpanian?
Here.
And Mr. Penny Hop?
Here. Wonderful. Can everyone please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome back and welcome. We're gonna continue on from last night. We had a really good evening last night. Lots of really great questions, good feedback, good information. So we're excited to continue on. So I will turn it to Kate.
Thank you for showing up again.
We had a little time management issue last night, stayed a little late, but it was all good in the interest of getting questions answered and getting a lot of really good information out there. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for being here and ready to talk. The way we have this set up is we have a couple of presentations and then we have a Q&A. So if you follow along with the slides, we'll get to the Q&A piece. These folks are really well trained already to take notes and wait for that moment so that we can do the questions and answers kind of together. And they tend to feed off of each other, so that's really cool. And breaks are also built in and we're pretty informal, so help yourselves get up and down if you need to. Food and snacks and drinks on the table at the back. Up we go.
We're going to the primary school.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Jen Humphrey, principal at Pleasant Hill. We're really excited to be with you this morning and share some of our celebrations from past projects and support that we've had. Yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but can we start with introductions all around? Because
sure.
I think we don't always all get to see each other.
Great idea.
Thank you, Diane. I should have done that.
Great idea. Jillian, do you want to start? Sure.
Jillian, school board.
Jacob Brown, assistant principal at the high school.
Sarah Blaisdell, principal at the high school.
Jen Humphrey, principal at Pleasant Hill.
Kelly Martin, principal at Blue Point.
Ann Lovejoy, principal at Corners.
Katie Vitro, director of curriculum. Kelly Crosby, principal at Wentworth.
Brent Stoner, assistant principal at Wentworth.
Kathy Terrell, principal at the middle school.
Michael Diaz, athletics and activities. Terry, principal at the high school.
Jeff Rooney, superintendent. John Joseph Patrick Keller, III, school board.
All of that. Leanne Castle, school board.
Shannon Lindstrom, school board.
Diane Netto, assistant superintendent.
Carolyn Galen, school board.
Brayla Tarpinian, school board.
Kate Bolton, business manager.
And John.
John Anderson, town council.
Great. Well, that was a great idea. Thank you for that. It's much more welcoming of everyone. So this morning, we're excited to share some of the celebrations, as I said, that we've benefited from at the K through 2 level. Last year, we were fortunate to add a full-time school counselor that was shared between our 3 buildings. I'll talk a little bit about each of these in order. That position was beneficial to us in terms of really leading the communication that happens between our multi-tiered system of support teams that exist at each of the 3 schools to benefit the children who are struggling academically, behaviorally. And she really keeps our school team communicating about all the needs of those students, the schedule, the documentation of data that's collected in terms of supports for students and those interventions, and really helps us with that planning. She also has been able to support us in areas of higher need in particular buildings. If we have a group of students who need extra support, she's been able to work her schedule to do a little bit of support for those students on a limited basis, at least, coupled with some of the work that she's doing for our state mandated sexual abuse prevention programming that she also provides for students under the Safer, Smarter Kids umbrella. And she's been able to execute that programming throughout the 3 school buildings. Our Mind Up curriculum implementation this year has been district-wide at the K-2 level and has really infused itself into all settings at K-2, which has been exciting to see. We're seeing evidence of that social emotional learning happening in classrooms, but we've also infused some of the practices we've been learning as a staff into hallways and buses and cafeterias and playgrounds and those conversations with kids. The Mind Up curriculum is really built on 4 pillars of neuroscience and learning how the brain works, positive psychology in terms of a growth mindset for learning, and in addition to that, the mindful awareness, being focused as we do our learning. So that's been a great benefit and has been infused into all classrooms. So that's been wonderful. You see a book collection there. We supplemented with some great books to support that learning. And then expanded leadership stipends. We have expanded our building leadership teams at each of our 3 K-2 schools. And that's been really beneficial in terms of some shared leadership and group planning. We've been able to open up the lines of communication across the 3 buildings in terms of special initiatives that are happening, scheduling decisions that need to be made, really looking at the cohesiveness and continuity across the 3 buildings has been really beneficial and has allowed teachers to have a voice in the decisions that are being made throughout the phase.
Okay, so our current story, which is going to be a little bit about our needs. Facilities, I think you heard from Todd last night. And I think the board is well versed in our facility needs at K2 and that really nothing has changed, right? Nothing magical has happened in terms of our space needs having opened up. And, you know, these are well documented and nothing has gotten any better. And I think that the reality is still felt daily, you know, especially as our needs shift and change. You know, I can personally speak to, you know, we need another staff member. Where do we put that staff member? If there are additional materials that are needed, where do those go? You know, when the fire department tells me that there's clutter in, you know, an entryway, that's storage. You know, so these are the things that all 3 of us are dealing with, trying to meet student needs and staff needs, and it's just gonna continue that way until we have a solution. In terms of student needs, I think you heard from Mr. Brody last night, so I think we got a little glimpse into special services. Yeah, student needs at K2 continue to be really complex. And that includes behavior and those social emotional needs. And that's not limited to students who are identified, you know, as requiring special services. That's for all students. The pandemic left a mark on sort of these groups of students that are still struggling to develop those coping skills to access school in the same way that we remember, you know, 5 to 10 years ago. So, and I think staff are struggling to develop those skills to kind of deal with the students in a new way. So the Mind Up curriculum is kind of one way that we're addressing that, and all of us building those new ways of approaching school. So that's going to take a little time. but, you know, it just makes the work complex. And with young children, it's very hands-on, right? Kids are externalizers at that age, and so it's a little bit loud, it's a little bit busy, it's a little bit handsy. And it can make for some tricky situations at times. But that's just part of our story. We continue to see more multilingual learners, which just adds more complexity and challenges for teachers and students, and just kind of making sure that there are resources for students to access education. Students who may not speak English at all. So, just another layer that we have to be prepared for and provide access. And then the, icing on the cake is staffing challenges, right? So we need staff, and we continue to struggle with subs, even though that's better. Those are kind of Band-Aids anyway, but hiring quality staff, it continues to be a real challenge. I'm sure you heard a little bit of that last night, that, we're gonna need so many ed techs to support students. Will we find those people? When people leave, filling those positions, it takes a long time sometimes to fill a position. So we have some really high needs for our students, and it's really difficult to fill those positions. So.
All right, so this budget is pretty exciting for us at K2 because we're actually hopefully gaining some positions that we've needed for a very long time, and we have tried to get through a variety of iterations of how we've called the position, how we've advertised the position, how we've tried to fill the position. It's never really stuck. Several years ago, we tried to get a behavior specialist at each building at the K2 level to help with regular ed and special education students. That has not stuck, didn't gain any traction on that for a variety of reasons. So over time, that position has sort of morphed. And last school year, Title I was able to give Blue Point an early literacy position for kindergarten, targeted intervention at kindergarten. That position was incredibly beneficial to the kindergarten class. They were able to reduce their number of academic support referrals to by 50%, which again means that more kids are reading at grade level in the next level, at the next grade, and that just continues. So it's a huge benefit. That was not a position that Blue Point and that Eight Corners or Pleasant Hill was able to have. This school year, Eight Corners got a ed tech position under the same Title I position. And so hopefully that position was also meant to help kindergarten and early literacy. That personnel has changed over this year, but it has been a huge benefit at Eight Corners to have an additional person available for kindergarten. We have a small but incredibly mighty class at Eight Corners of kindergartners who have many unidentified and unmet needs. And this person has done an amazing job of helping, this position has done an amazing job of helping meet those needs while children were getting identified or while we were building a plan for them, because we had no idea they were coming until August 29th. So, and the layers of needs are just incredible between not only the student, but language barriers with the parent, language barrier, so it just goes on and on and on. So this position will be a professional teaching position at all three schools. Blue Points will remain under title and funding, and Pleasant Hills and mine will be local funding, which is awesome because we can spread that need across without having to worry so much about the Title I requirements and caveats. So it's just going to be life-changing to have another set of hands at that 8th grade level, and at that ability to float and meet the needs of kids immediately and not just trying to piece together a plan for them. And hopefully we will see the investment in that as they get older and don't require as much academic support or don't require as much, or aren't behind in literacy and math. And their social skills, quite honestly, because some of that is just learning how to be in school, learning how to be with other groups of kids, learning how to be with somebody other than their parent. You know, in some ways, the pandemic is a distant memory, but these are the kiddos that were not in daycare, not in preschool, not with other kids at this age. Their parents and every adult they knew had masks on, so they didn't see their facial expressions or their mouths when they made words. So they just didn't get all that, that learning that just happens by being in an environment with people and hence sharing a lot of experiences socially with variety of people. So that position is absolute joy to be thinking about. The expanded K-5 librarian position, this is again something we have been asking for I don't know how many years, like lost count, like maybe, yeah. The K-5 librarian shared across 4 buildings and 50% of the school district has just not been adequate. The K2 buildings get, you know, a librarian half a day a week. And we have ed techs running the libraries and they're very, very good at doing that, but they don't have the same skill set as a fully certified librarian with all the other different skill sets that come with an information media specialist, I believe is what they call them now. So, you know, we will be able to offer more things to teachers. We'll be able to offer more opportunities for students in the library. Right now, they go to library once a week for 40 minutes with a full-time K2 librarian and a full-time 3-5 librarian dedicated to our, that could be more. We could start adding some makerspace or Tinker Lab or some other things that haven't been available to kids at K2 at all, given our personnel. Our teachers will be able to have somebody that they can go to that can be right there when they need somebody to help support a learning opportunity, content that they're studying for kiddos, whether it's the 2nd grade oceans project or a special interest that a student might have, and getting books in all the languages that our students need books in, not just English. And just being able to research that and fill those needs. We haven't had anybody who's had the time or the ability to do that at this time. So that's I think some people look at that and say, like, why do we need a librarian? But I don't think they realize how far the tentacles of a librarian can reach and how many people they can truly help. And when they do see that, they will be thrilled. So I think it's really a gift that we're excited to explore all the possibilities. It reminds me a little bit of the school counselor. We had no idea how many other things she could do besides the Safer Smarter Kids and the MTSS, the RTI data, but the Mind Up, all of that has been something that she can start helping with and supporting and, you know, helping take off the plates of teachers or help support teachers with. So that's the kind of position it is. It's a district, it's a phase-wide position that will support everybody. Unmet needs, I think those are pretty clear under the facility role. Just, you know, minor things, Pleasant Hill just has no room for anything else. My space is going to be adding a 2nd functional life skills program to the K2 phase. So I will be taking a classroom to house that. I'm fortunate right now that we moved the program down to Blue Point, so I have a space to put it back into. But again, that means one less space for small group work, one less space for teachers, you know, copy machines and all those other things that need to be in schools. The facilities are still definitely a need. The world language teacher, I don't know, again, I mean, 25 years that we've been asking for world language at K2, it's come down to Wentworth, it's gone back up, it's like barely touched, we've never quite gotten down to 2nd grade. But I think we all know the world is a very small place now and kids need to have exposure to languages other than English. They hear it from their new friends who speak Portuguese, English, French, Spanish and English. They have multiple languages as 5-year-olds and our kiddos haven't been exposed to that at all, and it's a real disservice to them in general. And the ripple effect goes all the way up to AP Spanish at the high school level or AP French. So they just don't have the opportunity to gain enough skills and confidence with that, proficiency with that to continue on to high school at higher levels. So we're hoping that will someday be a part of our plan. And a STEM teacher. Again, STEM is something that probably 20 years ago, we never thought would be a need or an ask at this level. But the way the world is going with all the science and technology and math and things that we need with coding and computers and everything else, STEM teachers could be a huge factor in helping grow this math and science skills of kiddos at K2. And if you catch them young and get them inspired, they, see themselves as being things that they've never thought about being as an adult. So STEM teachers can really open up such a huge avenue of skills and opportunities for kids. And starting young, again, helps take away the fear of a computer or the fear of making a mistake. It can teach them to do lots of trials of things and just to really build resilience and perseverance in their school. So that is still an unmet need, and someday, maybe, but not this coming years.
Ian, quick question. We all know Title I, but there's gonna be, John may not, or anyone watching it may not. Can you explain how Title I works and what that funding would entail?
I'm gonna let Katie answer that question. She's in charge of the Title I grant, and I only know enough to be dangerous, so.
So the Title I program is federally funded programming for students who meet the requirements under free and reduced lunch. What it does is ensure that our economically disadvantaged students don't have barriers to their education. So specific funding is allocated to ensure that they have access to equitable education. Basically, the state looks at numbers of free and reduced lunch and determine whether or not schools are eligible. Here, Blue Point is currently receiving funding for a Title I teacher. They did last year, they did again this year. And then our funding allocation grew a little bit, enough for us to add an ed tech position at 8 hours. What Ian kind of alluded to with these early intervention positions is that funding can be a bit variable and unpredictable. We don't get that funding allocation until later in the school year, usually after the has ended or is closing. So local funding provides predictability.
What is our general, what's this year's Title I allocation again, just for the benefit of the group?
The full allocation, I'd have to go and look that up because I don't remember the Title I allocation. It's lumped in with Title II and Title IV, so I tend to look up,
Right, yeah.
It's not big bucks, but it's about around 100,000.
yeah, I was gonna say it's like 119, I wanna say.
Yeah.
Thousand, which, if we were to compare ourselves around, schools around us, is a very small.
Yeah, we're a very low receiver, that kind of thing.
Okay, Wentworth, lots to celebrate at Wentworth for sure, though, we'll focus on the things that were a direct result of the previous budget cycles, and investment. And so, the first was, determining some creative solutions to address the needs and the evolving needs of our struggling readers and writers. Again, I don't want to be repetitive of some of the things that my K2 colleagues have stated, but we're still feeling pandemic impacts for sure. And then in addition to that, we've had this exciting new development of really having a lot of new enrollments of students who are new mainers and multilingual language learners, which creates amazing diversity, but also creates some different needs than we have addressed previously. So in the previous budget, we were able to add 1.4 literacy ed tech positions. So the 0.4 was to expand what we had previously as a 0.6 to make that a full-time role, and then we added one more. So that enabled us to really increase the time and intensity of tier 2 support. So support that's a little bit more than what can happen at the classroom level, and intervention so that we're not continuing with the rate of special education referrals. And I'm sure some of that information you heard from Mr. Rohde last night, that we can really address those needs in real time with more direct support with an expanded literacy team. So that has been very positive. Students who were previously in literacy support might receive 2 or 3 sessions per week. And with this expanded team, they're getting more like 4, and some students receiving 5 days of tier 2 support per week. We're now able to provide programming through some of the previously only students in special education were receiving support through programs like what is the name of it? Spire, thank you, through Spire. And now we're able to do that through a tier 2 support, which also keeps kids in their gen ed classroom and then supports those early reading needs. So that's been really, really positive. Also last year, we were able to move 2 classroom teachers that were previously funded through the ESSER funds into the operating budget. So maintaining our class size goals is always just such an overarching impact for our students, for our teachers, for our school as a whole. So I think that we avoided a bit of the fiscal cliff that we saw in other districts by slowly rolling those positions into our operating budget. And so we're in a really great place with that. And then a final celebration of success that was impacted by our budget last year is that we're now in March of our year 1 implementation of Ruler, which is our evidence-based SEL approach to social and emotional learning. And so Ruler is it's different from Mind Up, but it's a nice kind of progression of skills for students as they move through the phases. It was really thoughtfully selected at each phase level, which evidence-based curriculum materials we were going to access and really commit to as a resource. Ruler is developed at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and our implementation team was fortunate enough to go to that conference recently and really bring back some great learning for our entire school. And the first year for Ruler is real, and this is unique, I think, is really focused on the adult learning. So we have spent this year focused on the adult SEL needs at Wentworth, which has been really a great journey to take together as the adult learners in our school. Next year, we'll transition to implementing student lessons, evidence-based social emotional learning lessons, which is different from what we previously did and will continue to do. All of the things that we know are great for students, like, brain breaks and, motor breaks and all of the little teaching strategies that are in place will continue to be in place, team building, all of that work. But this is more evidence-based instruction. Ruler is an acronym. It stands for recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. And it's going to build really beautifully on the foundation pieces that they will acquire through the K2 Mind Up, where they're learning about how their brain works and then taking that next step at 3rd through 5th grade of learning how to apply. So really, really exciting work. And we've been using the Wednesday early release time as a staff to work together on unpacking this adult SEL learning. So that's how we've been addressing that. That said, there are still some challenges that we're facing, not unlike what, K2 shared. We have ongoing student needs, with SEL. Not, the way that we're seeing that manifest is, in some of the ways that we're seeing it manifest is our chronic absenteeism and, school avoidance kind of district-wide, but specific to Wentworth. 12% of our students have missed 10% or more school days. That's pretty significant, at the 3rd through 5th grade level, I think. And that's pretty consistent across our, district. And it takes some really, thoughtful and intensive programming and supports and personnel and connections to address that, with students. And that's really more than a direct student intervention in many cases, particularly with school avoidance. That is like a whole family wraparound support intervention. And it's a unique need that we didn't face to this degree pre-pandemic. It's really kind of something that has evolved since COVID and since, you know, the shutdown and hybrid and just transitioning back into 5 days a week, 187 days per year. It's a lot. Students accessing student advocacy and, support through our school counselors and social workers is, I think, an all-time high this year. So the need is certainly greater than ever for our regularly scheduled students, whether that is through an IEP or a 504 plan, or just, you know, they're on the regular schedule for connecting with a student advocate, or just as needed basis. The amount of time that our student advocates are directly face-to-face with kids is nonstop from the moment that they're walking through the door until the end of the day. And there has been an increased volume of behavior referrals. I'll share that data in the next slide a little bit. And academic needs, which I mentioned in the previous slide, addressing those academic needs, particularly in the area of literacy acquisition, is an ongoing challenge post-pandemic. The range is really, really wide. There are students who are, you know, well above grade level to students who are well below grade level in every single classroom. So addressing that wide range of needs while students are still acquiring those foundational skills is a challenge. And while we're expecting them to apply higher level skills, it's certainly a challenge. So that is part of our current story. And then professional needs, I feel like a broken record with this each and every year, but time, I think, is just a universal need, probably not just for education, but particularly in education. We really need more time for professional development, for grade level curriculum review, the work that Katie's department oversees, and just development and grade level collaboration. We have this beautiful, unique, amazing setup at Wentworth that our teams are vertical. And so we have 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers on each of the learning communities. And that's really great for so many things, particularly students, but a challenge that it creates, there's not a time that during the school day that all the 3rd grade teachers, for example, can get together, or all the 4th grade teachers. So it creates challenges for that, ensuring that our curriculum is, you know, guaranteed and viable, and that we're implementing and calibrating and all of that work. And then this year, as I mentioned, we are focused on the adult SEL portion of ruler implementation. And then next year, as we're beginning to implement with students, we are still going to need time for that professional development, calibration, year 1 implementation for student SEL. And then the same as what K2 stated, staffing challenges. I will say with optimism, it is improved from last year, right? Like slightly better position than we were in last year, but we still every day regularly have unfilled daily openings for absences due to illness or for whatever variety of reasons our staff, need to be away from school, and long-term substitute openings, if people change roles or leave or having a baby. It's challenging to fill those long-term substitute teacher positions as well. We are continually maintaining unfilled ed tech positions, both in special education and in general education. And then the unfilled essential support roles, bus drivers, kitchen staff, custodial, IT crew members, that all impacts our day at school. It's at least 3 times a week, I'm sending out a SMORE notification, oh, bus 34 is going to be late this afternoon, we don't have a driver, there'll be, so then the kids stay at school later, that requires staffing, it's, all of those staffing challenges impact the day-to-day business of school. And it has improved slightly, but it's still a challenge. In this budget, we too are really excited about this budget proposal. The first is maintaining our class size and instructional goals with the addition of 1.0 classroom teacher. That's just to keep our class sizes at within that target range that we have identified as our leadership council and supported by the school board. So adding that this year, it happens to be a 5th grade teacher. It would be a 5th grade teacher for the next fiscal year. Our 4th grade class is really, really big right now, and they're moving to 5th grade, and we're not able to just move that 4th grade teacher to 5th grade because then the 4th grade classes would be too large. So it's just the way that the distribution of students at each grade level has fallen that we really need that 1.0 classroom teacher for class size data. And we've looked at it a multitude of different ways, and that is definitely an identified need. The next position in this proposal we're very excited about. We're calling it right now a WIN Academy teacher, and WIN would stand for What I Need. And this is a Gen Ed Tier 2 support for students who I've already talked a lot about. So students who are just needing a little bit more time or intensity on a variety of different skills. So I'm envisioning this position similar to, but also with some unique differences, similar to the study center at the high school and the academic center at the middle school, but more geared toward an elementary model. So it would be for students, here are some examples, but there are a lot of ways that a teacher in this position could address student needs. So for our newcomers, our new Mainers, and students who've had limited or interrupted formal education, they really present unique learning needs. I think in the K2 level, where especially at the lower K2 level, all of the kids are learning those really foundational skills that our newcomers need. And so they're getting a bit more access to those foundational skills like letter sound identification and, numeracy and counting with one-to-one correspondence and all of those pieces. Those skills aren't regularly being addressed in a 3rd, 4th, certainly not a 5th grade classroom. That doesn't mean that our new Mainers require special education. That doesn't mean that there is an underlying learning disability or, something that would require the support of special education. It means that they need some additional time and support. And I feel we can really better address those needs in a Tier 2 setting where there's still plenty of time in their gen ed classroom with their peers, getting all of those rich conversations and collaboration, but additional time for the support with those foundational skills. And that could happen through a What I Need teacher in WIN Academy. So that's one area that could be supported. Short-term support for students who are new to the district. We generally we're addressing that through a variety of ways right now and mechanisms and whoever's available and kind of patching it together. But what I mean by this is when students move in, they kind of need a little crash course in our curriculum. So for example, even if they're just moving from a neighboring district and our neighboring district doesn't use math and focus, and so they've never heard of a bar model, for example, and our students are already using that skill in the class, they need just a little crash course, a little fix up, a little additional support to kind of slide into the learning that's happening in their gen ed classroom. So that short-term support for students who are new to the district as they're addressing those specific curriculum pieces could be addressed through Win Academy. For students to continue to access their education as they're navigating an illness or a longer-term absence, to be able to slide back in and kind of get caught up and up to speed so that they're not out for 3 weeks due to appendicitis and then coming back to the classroom just completely lost, right? That there could be somebody to help bridge that gap and help a smoother transition back to the gen ed classroom to not increase the stress and anxiety around. Everybody has had that feeling of being plucked back in and having no idea what's going on. It doesn't feel great. We don't want to do that to 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. And then, as I mentioned, our attendance pieces, so support for students who are actively navigating school avoidance or chronic absenteeism, again, helping it becomes kind of a domino effect or a snowball effect, I guess. If you're out and then you feel lost when you come back, and then that makes you feel stressed out, and then you stay out more, right? If we have a physician who can help bridge that gap, get kids up to speed, help them with a soft transition back into their classroom, I think that would be super helpful. And then I think there are a myriad of ways that someone in this position could support students' executive functioning needs around organization and just navigating life in school and SEL needs in a smaller group setting. So this is a really exciting potential addition to our school. Very similar to what Anne was saying, kind of like the tentacles could be really far reaching, more so. This is just what I've identified that I know could happen as a result of this, but should this budget be approved, I would be very excited to come back and share the impact because I think it will be more than what I've just described. And then I won't repeat everything about the expanding the learning commons position and what a dedicated librarian at Wentworth would do for our school. But I will say it's been a shared position for all eternity, I'm pretty sure.
For a while.
It was K-8 for a while, shared even more. You know, one K-5 librarian is supporting over 1,300 students, and all of the teachers in all disciplines across 6 grade levels and 4 buildings. It's just an unsustainable model, you know, in addition to all of the pieces that Anne stated that are instructional and would directly benefit our students and teachers. It's an unsustainable model and it's resulted in turnover. And so in 3 years, we've had 3 different librarians. And we've got a really great one right now, and I'd really love for her to stay. It's just.
And Kate to go.
We'll figure that out later.
We're gonna do that.
Yeah. But I mean, she's a benefit to the district and it's just, there are other districts, we've lost librarians to other districts offering a dedicated librarian in one building, you know, great as Scarborough Public Schools are. It's easy to see why people are making that decision year by year by year by year. And it's not a great return on investment to dedicate a lot of time and effort and support and personnel and professional development to somebody who stays on board for a year and then moves on. And it's like Groundhog Day. So this position is just long overdue and I think just really makes sense fiscally at this point. And then I'll speak briefly to just some unmet needs. School leader capacity is something that Rem and I have been talking a lot about and thinking a lot about, as the needs become more complex and our student population is growing. It's, it's just the two of us, and if I do say so myself, are a great team, but there are a lot of kids and a lot of teachers and a lot of building and a lot of needs, at the Wentworth level. So the essential programs and services, like the funding formula, the ratio, the K-5 school administrator ratio is, set at 1 to 305. And then the median across the state of Maine is 1 to 250, and we are currently working at 1 to 340, so well over that range. Just some of the pieces that get in the way, not get in the way, that's the wrong way to say it. Some of the pieces that are just really challenging to manage on a day-to-day basis and be present, and at 3rd through 5th grade, it's a really kind of high phase level. We have a lot of communication with parents and families. We feel like we have to be kind of everywhere all at once, and I know that that's not unique to Wentworth, but the 504 case management and chairing those meetings has just really grown astronomically. It's increased just in, I think, a couple of years from 33 students on 504 plans to 54 students at Wentworth. Those meetings, just chairing the meetings, include initial referral, eligibility, annual, triannual, and transition meetings, and just overseeing the entire process. Student behavior referrals, which I mentioned previously, that I would share a little bit more specifically. We pulled some of our data, so we have like a orange and red referral system that we use at Wentworth, and so in the 2021-22 school year, there were 422 total referrals. In 22-23, 454 total referrals. Some of those are at the teacher level, some are at the school leader level. To date, at 110 school days, so I guess that was a few weeks ago when we prepared these slides. They're already at 354 referrals, so it's a lot of needs that are requiring our support and intervention. And so 177 of those were referred to school leaders, and that's a complex process, a lot of times including an investigation and follow-up and meetings and communication and all of those pieces. It all takes time. And then supervision and evaluation with our growing staff and kind of the staff turnover that I've mentioned previously, and the demographic of the Wentworth staff. We've had a lot of retirements, and a lot of new staff. So supervision and evaluation for new staff is an intensive process and a time-consuming and important process that you want to give your full attention to as well. So this year we have 17 probationary staff on the cycle, so P1s and P2s. That requires a bit more time, support. It requires a goal setting conference, a pre and post conference for a formal observation, 2 walkthrough observations, a summative meeting, and that's just in the classroom time for each of those teachers, plus all of the support and professional development that goes along with that. So it's a heavy lift to have that many new staff. In addition to that, this year we have, or in 24-25, we'll have 27 of our continuing contract staff on the supervision and evaluation cycle, which is a similar amount of time required, just one less walkthrough observation. Obviously, their professional development needs are different than a new staff member, but not inadequate at all, right? There's still time required for that. And then we also evaluate our ed techs annually. And so this year we have 26 ed tech staff on the evaluation cycle. So it's a big lift between two people. And we're happy to do it, and we love our jobs, and show up with a smile every day, but I think just sort of laying some, creating some context for what the demands are. And then the other thing that was brought up in one of our staff listening sessions, as an unmet need, we have and I'm very, very proud of, and that's a little picture of our chorus club up there, and they're so adorable, and they're performing tonight at the all chorus concert. We've developed a really robust set of after-school and co-curricular clubs and activities for students at Wentworth, and we're proud to have that, but there, unfortunately, participation for students entirely depends on their caregivers' availability and ability to be able to transport them home afterward. So that creates, that creates an inequity. And if we had access to some sort of a late transportation situation, then that would mitigate some barriers for all students to access. I mean, that said, we don't have enough bus drivers currently to fund our regular run. So, it's a big, complex situation, but a need that staff brought up because every year there are students, before we do the full enrollment for clubs, I ask teachers, like, are there any students that we want to make sure that we kind of like priority enroll in any of these who might have potential barriers, and a lot of times we're unable to because of transportation pieces. And then finally, this is connected to the staffing situation. Our general education classroom support. We've had this great model in place for many, many years at Wentworth. It wasn't my design, but I think it's brilliant that each learning community has an ed tech, a gen ed tech, who previously, like pre-pandemic, their role was to support the midday, the lunch and recess supervision and kind of be the lead on that, but also throughout the day to be able to push into the classrooms on their learning community. So there's an ed tech 4-degree learning community. Those 9 classrooms, ed tech is available to be an extra set of hands. Oh, you're doing a great science experiment on Thursday, I'll be there to be a second person. Oh, you've got, a unique need in your reading class on Monday, I'll be there to pull this group. They've really been unable to do that since the pandemic because they are essentially substitute teaching every single day. So they're filling those gaps for us. I'm so grateful that we have them. I'm not sure how we would have navigated this staffing crisis without them, but the give to get there for covering the unfilled absences is that classroom support is not happening at all. So, so those are some of our unmet needs. With 2020 hindsight, I wish we didn't end with that piece of the presentation, but a lot of great things happening, some things to plan for in the future.
Like athletic activities.
All right, everybody still with us? We need a breath. Uh,
There's a dance floor, Mike.
Yeah, dance floor. Full room. Well, always a pleasure to talk about after-school activities. We certainly think that the role that we play is certainly bringing our community together and helping to provide some of those memorable things for our students. In terms of celebrating our successes, certainly the progression that our unified programs have made over the years, and to the point now where we do offer an activity each season. I think some of you recently attended the celebration of the National Unified Champions award that was received. So great work by a lot of good people on that. Really, if you watch a unified game, it's really what education-based athletics is about. So a great opportunity, and kind of see that expanding as they're developing more and more programs. Right now, the programs that we have, where I feel really good about where we're one of only 3 schools right now that offer volleyballs. So we're trying to get some more schools across the state to do that. And we're maybe, one of 9 schools right now that are doing bocce. So I think as those grow, it'll even be a richer experience for our kids.
And we are actually the only high school in the state offering all 3
Yeah. Mhm.
sports seasons.
Mhm.
The only high school.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So I think Kate can probably speak more about this than I even can, but the renovations of the track. We have that second phase that has to be completed. That's still kind of ongoing, and in the works. We were able last year in the budget to add some support in terms of help with activities, like an activity stipend kind of position coordinator. That's been, you almost, one of those things when you had somebody, you wonder how you've done it without the person for so long, but just a tremendous addition to the department to have that person focus on those club programs, which later you'll see. I talk about continued knowledge and insight of our after school programs. It's really kind of come from that, position. So point that out. We do, most of our programs now are using Family ID. Our high school club programs were the last to come on board with that. We're still kind of going through some growing pains with that, but we knew that it was going to be a transition process. We have offered more, what's referred to as combination teams through the Maine Principals Association than we've ever offered previously. Scarborough was always the school that we always had enough kids to do everything. And we were kind of the last one standing in terms of not having to combine with other schools, but not so much. Girls hockey is a combination team now with Falmouth, and we actually have quite a few kids on that on that team. Cheering, we're the home school, but we take some kids from Falmouth to help support that. And wrestling, we've combined the last couple of years with Gorham. That's been a good experience. And we've combined alpine skiing with Gorham as well. And that group of kids actually had quite a bit of success this year, and did really well. We're really kind of to the point that we probably should be breaking off from that and having our own program again. So we've done some recent advertising in some unique places for that position, because staffing is an issue. There's no question about that. We're not hiring full-time employees, so it's a little bit more challenging. I think that's all I want to say about that slide, Kate. So, this slide talks about our enrollment numbers, where we continue to be very healthy. We're kind of maxed out at all of our places this spring. We're probably going to have to do some more, have some more cut sports, traditional cut sports that we've had in the past. We've been able to, this is last year's numbers, by the way. This year's numbers are, fall we exceeded this year. We went past last year's fall numbers. Winter, we were about the same, a little under. Spring, with our current registrations, we're actually way above that number this year. Interestingly enough. So, and I think that, so we continue to kind of stay healthy. Jillian, I think you asked about our board policy on the 20-to-1 ratio. And I didn't bring anything forward to the superintendent or assistant superintendent, because I think we do need a number there. We need some number that says this is the range you should be in. And we use that number a lot for how many chaperones do we need at a school dance or things like that too. And so I don't know that I have a better solution than what's already in the policy. So that's kind of that you'll see as we move into challenges. That's kind of the bigger challenge, but we continue to have a robust boosters program. We have, we're continuing to look at groups wanting to add to be a booster group. We have some club programs now that are really organized that way as well. And So we have around 20, I think 25 actually now, different booster groups that we manage. And they all range in their sizes. Some groups are very large, some groups are smaller, but it's around 500 volunteers or so that we manage through the booster program. That really raises those funds that, you know, make the activities kind of special. Those extra things that the group kids get. And we certainly couldn't do that without that level of support from boosters, not only through fundraising, but also through you know, extra support that the coach might need with various things, whether it's filming the game or doing the penalty box at the hockey game, whatever it is that they all do, so. But we couldn't do that without that. We also, you know, certainly continue to face some challenges. We've made great strides. I mean, for the past almost 15 years, I guess I've been doing this. Our goal has been in budgeting is to reduce our dependence on parent support groups for those essential things. Boy, have we made great progress with that. You know, I would think if this budget passes, then moving forward, really all we're facing are those staffing kind of things, like what we refer to as the booster supported positions or booster funded positions. That would really be our only roadblock. And when I first started here, there was not a program that didn't have to have some money from boosters to be able to run. And so we've made great strides there, which is, you know, a testament to the board's hard work and support and the community support that we've gotten. But we still have some holes there. And I think some of it is, like I mentioned, around staffing. It continues to be a challenge to, you know, have the proper coverage at activities and things like that. It's a lot. There's no question between middle school and high school in the amount of coverage. And we always say, we're glad it looks easy. It's not easy for it to look that way. So, but we're glad it looks easy to people when they attend a game. But when you have a few thousand people at a game, it's nerve-wracking. You still have to have all the supports in place that you would normally have. And when you're, for example, outside on the turf field, that's a different target for something to go wrong than inside a building that's locked down. And so there's some additional challenges that come with that. So in terms of game coverage and things like that. But we continue to make those strides and continue to work towards our coaches being nationally certified coaches. We're maybe one class away from that happening. So we're making, you know, some strides with these challenges, but they're still there. See some of the great pictures there. What the budget is allowing us to do, like I mentioned, is every year we get a healthy list of requests from parents or teachers or students about wanting to start new programs. And so we try to chip away at those things. Certainly esports has become an important part of what's kind of happening in Maine. There's, I think, over 30 teams now that have an esports program, and it just provides an opportunity for kids that might not otherwise be involved in something. So the budget this year is looking to pursue that program. Film Club is really developed into essentially a film festival. It's education based. It's not just a movie theater. And so one of our teachers brought that forward and has been doing a really good job keeping it not a movie house. You know, really making it education-based and theming it, things like that, and eventually morph into this kind of film festival activity that, that a lot of schools do. Jeff might even speak about that a little bit, because he had previously worked in a place that was a big program, an important program for that school.
Yeah, red carpet and everything, yeah, it's like opening for the student films and everything, and it really built and grew over a period of, 20 years, but it's pretty cool.
We're always looking, and Kate's been just wonderful with this, kind of looking at how can we evaluate what we're currently doing and then look for reallocations of things. So that's one of the things we're looking at with, this kind of middle school liaison position. It's really not much more money. It's more a reallocation of funds that we're already spending, for game coverage. But more formalizing that again, so that there's somebody there in the building that can work with kids. We also, this allows us to continue to do a little bit of refresh and renew on equipment. We have probably many millions of dollars worth of equipment in our world. And so that has to be on some type of rotation, no different than school buses or, maintenance vehicles, things like that. And it's expensive. I mean, a pair of goals is $10,000, soccer goals. It's just what it is now. And so those things are expensive. And so it needs to be on some type of rotation. We've been able to continue to do some of that. Like I mentioned previously, is maintaining that 20-to-1 school board policy kind of ratio. We're fortunate to have the boosters and support from that, but that would probably be my next goal, is to try to tackle that staffing issue a little bit moving forward, but to kind of continue on that track of reducing that dependence on booster groups. And I think we can't obviously do everything every year. Our list is pretty long when we start the budget process of those club programs that people want to add, but we do tick away at it. But there are some things that are left off the out. We had an outing club at one time in Scarborough when I first started. The issue around that was transportation. For that program to really be successful, they really need access to their own vehicle. So we need to solve that problem first before we can, look to kind of bring that program back. So that's kind of really related to that. And we have a teacher that's really interested in mock trial, and we need to, look at how we can get that back going again. And although I think, on the plus side, also it exists on the other side, is that we need to continue to look at how we schedule an equipment rotation and how we do that. So if it makes sense budget wise, that we're not looking at all of a sudden needing $200,000 because we just waited too long on stuff. How can we make incremental, take incremental opportunities to make some adjustments along the way to things. Very much like we do with the football equipment that's in the budget this year, hopefully will pass, is it's small incremental rotational types of things. We're not buying 75 new football helmets every 5 years. We're buying 10 or 12, and on a rotation. But we're not outfitting 75 football kids every year, which is over $2,000 a kid now. And so we make some small bites in that. And I think that's what we have to look at with all of our equipment, hurdles, pole vaults and mats and all, all the things that we have to have the infrastructure we have to run the program. So I think that's a tackle for the future too, is to identify those areas and put them on some type of rotating chart. And I think I'm at the end. Thank you.
All right. So if we go back, how about we start with the primary schools questions for. Minister?
Of course. I have a question specifically about the school council. You mentioned you have one that you're sharing. But last night we heard a lot about the incoming kindergarten class. Is one person enough to cover all of the needs?
This position, we have full-time social workers in each building, which are shared regular ed and special ed. So those positions deal with the sort of the immediate population, the in-person population on a regular basis. The school counselor is more of a guidance position that covers the whole phase and looks at a bigger picture, so a little bit higher up. So the iReady testing, the RTI data, the Safer Smarter Kids that benefits all K2. So she's doing broader based things. Could we use another one? Absolutely. Is it imperative given the incoming kindergarten class? Probably not. So because we do have our own, our own full-time staff at each building, which will deal with kids on it. To have one right now shared across 3 buildings, she's never in the place where the emergency happens, right? You're never in the right place. So if you had more, that'd be great, but we can't count on her to do that. We can't count on 2 people to do that. We each had our own, yes, but.
Yeah, our original ask when we started looking at school counselor or guidance was to have one in each building. And so we do want to grow that program. Now doesn't seem like the right time, basically just the needs of K-12. And we kind of want to, this is only the 2nd year of implementation, so we're kind of figuring out, what the impact is. And so you may see that next year.
But I probably didn't phrase it right. It was more of, I didn't think they'd be the emergency contact in any way, but you're gonna have folks on the ground who are, and would they be able to give that lift for the children who maybe are on,
Right.
may need some help that wouldn't otherwise happen? Katie, for the librarian share, are there any statistics or documentation that having dedicated librarians raises children's reading levels or puts them on a different track on their reading?
There is, let me pull it up.
Oh, and you don't need to pull it right now. I think it was more of, if that is something that the board had as far as communication, that really explains and underscores why this is a position.
There's so much data in the requisition.
I was gonna say, those are
Yeah,
such an
yeah, a
amazing
lot
job.
of research in that, so that might be.
Anything you can arm us with would be hugely helpful.
I certainly can.
Thank you. Also talked a lot about like the importance of the world language. Just wondering if ASL is part of that future planning as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that has been talked about on and off for years. Certainly in my building, that's something that's growing. And certainly we be open to any of that.
We would like to see that position come to fruition.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then my last question, on the Title I funding, because of the free breakfast, free lunch, are we seeing less updated information that's impacting us?
The way they collect information, there's a couple of, not to get into the details, but there are a couple of different ways that you can do that. There's like direct certification, free and reduced lunch forms. That has always been a challenge, to support the folks across the district in filling that out, whether they think they may qualify or not. That has certainly become an additional challenge in light of the free breakfast and lunch because most people aren't aware of the way federal funding is tied to those forms. So that's a challenge we're always looking at and talking about. Right now, I feel like the state's kind of in a spot where they're still trying to figure out the best way to collect that information and then provide that guidance to schools. And so
Yeah, and I can jump in a little bit. We actually, and Kate can probably help me with this, but we were actually really successful this year in getting those, reporting percentages to increase, and that really affected our subsidy level going up, because what we did was we tied the economic status form to the forms that need to be completed at the beginning of the year online. And so, as compared to previous years when we just made paper forms available, we got a much more increased, because everybody had to fill it out. And there were people who qualified. Kate, what was our percentage increase? It was pretty phenomenal.
What percentage increase of numbers of identified folks with economic status was already pretty large? I think that the difficulty in what you're referring to, Leanne, and Kate, is that the federal government hasn't caught up with us. That's a state program, and the state knew that they were not getting the right data from communities to impact the EPS formula and give subsidy appropriately. Right, so they created this economic status form that's much simpler than the one that goes to the USDA for school lunch. We felt like it was easier to complete. It's basically a yes or no. Instead of, here's my income, here's what I made last year, let me go pull out my W-2. The USDA form is a very high barrier, I think. Especially specifically for the folks who probably need the help more than others, right? But I think to Diane's point, the state form has been super successful for us. And you'll see in some of the budget book documents that we had a large increase in their ability to count the numbers of words however well along, right? So it's not necessarily that our demographic here has changed, it's that the counting system, counting method has changed. And they're making it so much easier for people, and we're making it easier for people to say, yes, they're qualified.
Oh, yeah, and the impact on that on subsidy is the weighted, there's a weighted amount per pupil from the state as part of your subsidy, where, you know, if a typical pupil is weighted 1.0, a student who is identified as socioeconomic status is 1.5. So you know, if that reporting is more accurately reflective of our population, then we're gonna get closer to the appropriate state subsidy.
No, go ahead. You don't have a question? Okay, I have two questions. So very similar to what Leanne asked. So I presume the kindergarten interventionist positions across the three are going to help you with the incoming class that we heard about. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely correct.
Okay, so is there, do you have any numbers as to, what work that will take off your teacher's plate? Because another thing we hear a lot of is that we need time, or we don't have time, or we don't, you know, we need more. So will these positions help to eliminate some of the work that your teachers now are doing?
I think we could speak to that a little bit in light of what Kelly was describing earlier, how when we have positions, ed tech positions, for example, whose role it is to support in the midday, but also to push into classrooms to support, and they're being pulled to sub, we're hopeful that this will alleviate that discrepancy and allow for that particular interventionist to be providing support consistently and to not be pulled away from their task, to be fulfilling other pieces of the puzzle. You know, we have for ed tech positions that have been very effective in the K-2 schools. They're also pulled away. And when we utilize them for K intervention, it pulls away from first and second grade support that they could be providing. So this position would really dedicate concentrated time for reading, for math, for writing in some cases, for behavior support, for those early interventions that we know can reduce the burden on future academic support or special ed needs of students. So it's really meeting kids with what they need, which reduces their future needs.
And I would say, at one point, we've had a teacher in that position, and she really supports that kindergarten team. And she conducts screenings on students, so that takes something out of the pictures. She goes to every student support team, so she knows all of the kindergarten students, and she supports the teacher and kind of, if they need more intervention, just kind of presenting that student, because she's working with them on reading or behavior, but, is also kind of advocating for their needs. And doing those interventions and documenting those interventions. She's a brave space. So, and the kids really know her and trust her, and, we're willing to spell believe them. And so, it's just like, it's another classroom within that pod, and it is a big thing off of their plate in terms of she's another teacher that if she's spending time in those classrooms early in the year, getting to know them, assessing them, and that is a big piece of what the first couple of months of kindergarten are for teachers, is kind of, getting to know where all of your kids are and what they need, because they're all over the place, right? And she helps to establish those routines and relationships along with the other kindergarten teachers. So it's a huge support.
I think too, one of the differences with having that position be a dedicated teaching position as opposed to an ed tech position is that she's able to really support with planning,
Yeah.
with parent
She's
communication.
in all their planning meetings.
Mhm. Whereas an ed tech position wouldn't necessarily take on that level of the role.
That's great. I have one more question. Anne, you mentioned you're losing a classroom for the functional services. What are you losing?
I'm losing a classroom space. So when the functional life skills program from my school moved to Blue Point 2 years ago, it left an empty classroom space. So we were able to move all the copiers and all the things that were in the hallway and sort of in the way prior to the clutter, the clutter, into a room dedicated to being able to do that. And so we will move that back out and put the functional life skills kiddos back in there where there's a bathroom and an ability to hang a swing and have all the equipment that they need close by, because you can't do those things as easily in the portable buildings because the ceiling structure isn't substantial enough. So they have to be in the permanent part of the building. So in order not to move everybody, we'll move stuff.
So it's almost like an admin space then. You could almost call it that.
Yeah, during COVID, during COVID, that classroom had 2 spaces, that program had 2 spaces. So we didn't have a teacher's room, we didn't have anything like a teacher bathroom, gained that back, plus the space next door. So we'll be giving them a classroom back where they were.
No one from the fire department here.
No.
I mean, they get it.
Yeah.
So are you losing a staff bathroom again then? If this is
Yes,
set up like this, so you're gonna
but
lose.
we still have one in the teacher's room. We're not losing the teacher's like kitchen area and small break space. That's a very small space. This is the classroom. It's been a homeroom. It's been a special ed room. It's been lots of different classrooms kind of thing. They're getting that back. So it's a regular size classroom with, bathroom, cubbies down by the library.
So how many bathrooms are you down? How many bathrooms are you down to for staff?
We'll be losing 1 adult space bathroom. So we'll be down to 2.
For all your staff?
We have the
The
same.
entire 8 wonders room at school.
We don't have to.
That's pretty typical for our kids in schools.
That's 1 more than we had in a long time, so we're not too bad.
We're good at hurrying up and leaving.
Right.
It's good to hear. The reason I'm asking you is because we have a new iteration of the building committee, and there are new people that are sitting on that committee that don't quite know some of the things that the functional space issues that you have at the K2 schools. And one of the things we did learn last night is that the cafeteria sizes at the schools that you have is actually starting to impede on Wentworth School. And so that was new information for me anyway, I think probably for most of the people here. But Wentworth is now taking over some of Todd's closets and this in the hallway. So they're now seeing some of the same challenges that you're seeing, but from a food perspective. Yeah, food storage perspective. And so it's, as you think about or as we think about, and the community thinks about the need for the school and a solution, it's really, those tentacles touch more than just the three of you. It touches others as well. And so, I just want to make sure we're really grounding ourselves in those facts.
Right, and I did have about 50 people come to tour last night from the building committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they saw all the spaces.
That's good. Yeah, that's.
It was amazing. I was like, well, they just kept coming.
Did you say 50?
50.
That's really good
Yeah.
to hear. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it
It was
was
almost
huge.
everybody.
It was huge.
Yeah, that's almost the entire committee. So that's really good to hear.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Is there any other questions for K2?
Well, I have like a more of a K-5. We heard about the subs being a challenge, and I just was curious, what is the biggest challenge of, is it just a general shortage, or is it what we're paying, are we not comparable?
Our sub rates are very comparable. We, work with our regional partners, in Greater Tobago Alliance. That's one of the things that we actually do pretty consistently is we calibrate with one another in terms of making, everybody's always asking the question, what are you paying? What are you paying? Because nobody wants to be on the bottom of that pile. So we are definitely holding our own there. I just think that there are not, the folks who want to go into schools and work with students for substituting at this point in time, right? I mean, and that goes to some things that we talked about last night, right? Which is if you can go and make a sandwich for $20 an hour and you're just kind of in your own zone, doing your own thing, why would you take on the responsibility of X number of?
Where is that job, Diane? 'Cause
We're not telling.
So I think that's, and again, it's a universal problem. It's not just a Scarborough problem.
And not just a main problem,
No.
right? It's like a national shortage.
Well, and just like Kelly was saying with her learning community ed techs, we have building ed techs in our offices that are the same design. And in years past, they had dedicated time that they would go into a first grade classroom for math support. They would go into, some of these classrooms for reading support. And they had these dedicated schedules in classrooms to support. That is completely gone now. And they do nothing but substitute in classrooms every day. Yesterday, I had 3 classroom teachers out, no subs, so they were all there all day long, which they're happy to do, they love to do, but it means who's doing the duty? Are they doing their duty as an ed tech because they have multiple duties every day? Or are they doing a teacher duty that they're subbing for? And then who's gonna do, sometimes they're both on duty, but, so it's just like covering all those other pieces or can be the trickiest part.
It's very challenging, Jillian, to ensure continuity of like the instruction and education pieces, because really what we're doing is prioritizing just safety and supervision, right? And so if there are 5 absences, which is on the low side, and one's a classroom teacher, and then there's an ed tech in a resource room, but we know that there's another teacher already in the resource room, so they're able to supervise the kids and keep them safe. We're prioritizing the safety and supervision, right? And so the continuity of instruction is the piece that I think gets really hit hard, because we make sure that our kids have an adult, but they might not maintain their instructional program in the way that they would have if we had a full cadre of substitute teachers.
And maybe part of that is like, substitute teachers don't get benefits or anything, so there's no like regional program for, some don't care about that.
Yeah, I think it's a different setup.
I think a lot of it too is we have I think we all have our regular subs that are comfortable in our buildings and live close by or go, the staff well, the tried and true. And they will say like, I will pick up this job, but I won't pick up that job. And yet when they come to the office, if that's where we need to put them, they get assigned that job, even if they on Frontline sign up for you know, kindergarten teacher, because they know that class and they know it's great, but then the higher need is somewhere else, they get shifted whether they want to be or not, so oftentimes they'll be like, well, I'm not, unless I know I'm gonna get that, I'm not gonna come, and then I'm sure that happens at every level, right? I mean, I want the, you know, English class, but not the biology class or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Because of the safety and supervision.
All right, I'm going to make a suggestion that we save our 3 to 5 questions and our mic questions until after we take a break. So let's just take a quick break, have some breakfast, go to the restroom, and then come back. We're holding with our, you know. We're holding for our chair.
And we're all.
For that day.
He's like, the bullet and not recognition, you know.
I know. Or like, or like, like.
Ready to go? All right, welcome back. We will pick up with our questions for 3-5. So Kelly, question for Kelly. I do have one from Freyla, needed to step out. She wanted to know if, there's a task force addressing the absenteeism that you've noted.
There is, I'll let Brem speak to that. He actually sits on that.
Yeah.
committee.
So about 6 years ago, I believe, was when we started a K-12 district attendance committee. So we meet regularly to just make sure that our protocols are all on the same page as far as you know, how often are we reaching out to families? What's our communication with sharing that data around chronic absenteeism? And all of our protocols and such. So yes, there is a committee, we meet regularly.
And I feel like we've, as a district, done a really good job kind of tightening up that communication and, you know, just last week at Leadership Council talked about, you know, what's the timing on, you know, certain communications and the letters that are sent home and at what point and how many days is what level of intervention. So I feel like we've come a long way with creating consistency in our approach at a developmental level for each phase.
I would also add it's, you know, within state statute as well, which requires us to have our own building teams as well that we report back to and monitor our own phase level data.
Yeah, so every school has an attendance committee that meets monthly to review all the attendance data. And then they take action on that, right? And as Brenda's mentioning, there was a new statute this year on chronic absenteeism that requires all districts to have attendance committee representation at every school. And as Kelly mentioned, we've been doing that in Scarborough for at least 5 years.
Plus years.
At least 5 years, even before it was in statute. So the statute just caught up, right, with all of the other districts who, you know, may or may not have had the practices that we had in place.
And do you look at tardiness as well in that?
We do, yeah, we do look at that.
Thank you. Is there any other, oh yes, go ahead.
Kelly, on the WIN programs, it sounds incredibly critical, especially wrapping in with the chronic absenteeism, the students that are coming in. Is there enough in migration that you might need more than 8 person to fill this type of a role?
I love your questions, Leah. I mean, I think we definitely could use a cadre of people at every phase level, right, to support these growing needs, but I think, this person in the WIN role would become part of the team at tier 2. So there is more than one person, but this person would become the lead coordinator and would have a bit more flexibility and reach than someone who's specifically for reading support, for example. But yes, I do think it's critically important, and I do think would begin to address the growing gap that we have.
I mean, as you know, I'm pretty passionate about those interventions because it makes a huge difference.
It does.
And I'd never want to shortchange it into that.
Thank you.
I have like 5, so I just want to be sure that we're, you know, you're good, Jillian? All right. With the literacy support specialist, just because I know it's not quite the same at the K2 level, but I'm curious as to, do you have numbers that show success with students who are able to graduate out of the program because they've developed enough skills?
So we do have entrance and exit criteria for all of our tier 2 interventions. So there's entrance and exit criteria for literacy support, and we actually just filled the 1.0 part of the 1.4 lit support position within the last month. It's been, again, back to that staffing challenge, it's been challenging, but we just found a really great person who's come on board and is already up to speed and hitting the ground running. So we haven't seen the full impact of that investment yet. My sense though is that what we are first going to see, because it's not like flipping a switch with acquiring the process of reading, that takes time for sure. But my sense is that what we will see much more immediately is, fewer referrals to special education for reading, because we're better able to help students make progress in a less restrictive setting, through this tier 2 support. So I think we'll see that first, and then, more students exiting academic support.
So we'll be
Does that
taking
answer your
the,
question?
yeah, because I think what I'm in my mind, as we think about the things we're just going to defend in here, right? Like, for me, the interventionalists at the K2 level really help to alleviate some of the pressure on you at the 3-5 level, which in turn helps Kathy, which in turn helps Nate, right? So if we can kind of lay that foundation, I think is really good, but also I wouldn't have thought about taking pressure off the special education plate as well,
It's
which
huge.
is a huge piece of.
I know Chris spoke to this, but the numbers in special education specifically for reading are, greater than ever before. And, you know, to the point where, you know, the intervention is meant to be a small group intervention, but when you have 14, 15 students in any given resource room who all require something slightly different for their reading instruction in special education, you know, then we're in the position that we're hiring ed techs to help deliver some of that instruction. And then we're in the position that there aren't qualified applicants to fill those roles. So it's a really compounding and complex issue, and anything that we can do to keep kids in a less restrictive setting and to help them make progress without, and then really dedicating special education for students who need that truly super intensive support is a win across all phase levels.
I have 2 SEL questions. One is, what does it mean when you say evidence-based? Because I heard it a couple of times. I just want to be sure I understand that.
Yeah, so Ruler and MindUp are both CASEL aligned products. Products isn't the right word, CASEL aligned curriculums and programs. And so CASEL is kind of like the meta-analysis of social emotional learning research. And so it is like a brain-based I want to say intervention system, because really that's really what it is, really supporting students' specific learning around how the brain works, and then how to learn and regulate your emotions and then make decisions based on that. And so I think, you know, when we went to school, that was something that you just kind of had to like figure out and learn organically, and some people did and some people did not. This is specific instruction about how your emotions impact your ability to learn, and how you're feeling, and how you can choose to stay in that feeling or make a change, and is it working based on the situation that you're in. I think is not something that we experienced going to school, but something that we've learned really makes a difference for kids. And it's different than, you know, I think that there's this broad umbrella of what SEL instruction means. And I think sometimes it's misinterpreted as, you know, practices like team building type things. And that is under the SEL umbrella, but actually instructing the kids on what it means to learn about, label, identify, and then live within your emotions is a different piece of that. It's more foundational, evidence-based. I don't know how to do there.
Yeah, really well. And I think the only piece that I would add to that great description is that when something is evidence-based, it's vetted against the research, comparing the outcome, that's the intended outcome of the program, with actual seen outcomes. It's data driven.
Right. And then the Executive functioning that you mentioned, I think you mentioned some of the kids were getting it, but is that something that everybody gets? Because I'm a firm believer in executive functioning skills, and that encompasses a lot, organization, time management. The ability to remember important dates, due dates. And so, what's interesting to me is I look at, my kids are older, but as I look at them, a few of them don't carry those skills. And so we're actually using outside sources to help develop that skill set. And it's as simple as, writing in an agenda book, which
Using
seems,
whatever resource.
yeah, right? And so, I would be I'm hopeful that all the kids are getting.
Yeah, great question. So just like virtually everything in schools, if we think of our 700 kids at Wentworth, then everybody's getting that kind of general, broad-based, good, high-quality tier 1 instruction at their classroom level. And that definitely includes specific instruction in executive functioning. And that's everything from, reviewing their daily schedule and the get ready, do done board on, projected in the morning, and here's what you need to do your work, and here's what your job task is, and this is what it looks like when it's completed. Like, all of those steps are happening for all kids. And that works, and in a perfect world, it works for 80+% of your students, but there are 20% of students who need something a little bit more and a little bit different and more specialized. And so that's what I'm talking about for the WIN Academy teacher. So it's instruction in executive functioning for students who need a little bit more and a little bit different than what they're getting in their gen ed setting.
Thank you. That's excellent. And then my last question is, we've also heard at a board level about the lack of transportation for Wentworth specific clubs. And is there any thought given, you mentioned we do have a transportation situation right now. We are down, we learned last night, six bus drivers for a normal course, their normal running the normal business. But is there anything that we can think about to allow the participation that doesn't involve late buses? Like, is there, for example, can they go to the library? And I don't know, I'm totally just throwing things out there. Can the kids stay at the school a little bit longer until parents are able to get them? Like, is there anything like that that's possible?
I'm sure that there are additional possibilities, and I and Brem and I have stayed many a late night for a variety of transportation reasons for kids. Unfortunately, I think it's more than just like lining up the timing. It's more that the family doesn't have a car or doesn't drive at all, or doesn't have access to reliable transportation, or works overnights and they can't sleep over at Wentworth. Like, that's where I draw the line. I think if it's a matter of like, oh, I can be, clubs are end at 4:30 and we can be there at 4:45, by each and every means, we would help make that happen. But
you're talking about much bigger.
It's, yes. And it's not a lot of kids, I'm not talking about offering transportation for like pure convenience reasons, even though that would be great in a perfect world. But for those families who truly do not have another option, it would be great.
I think it requires definitely some creativity, and I don't want to throw out too many ideas without talking with the appropriate people in their roles, but we